Hello and welcome to episode 3 of The East Meets the West. I'm your host, Re-Gor, and today I am joined by award-winning podcaster Patsy the Angry Nerd. How are you doing today, Patsy?
Oh, I'm doing pretty well. We've got some nice weather. You know, I love 75-degree days in the middle of November. That's always awesome.
Isn't it great? I love it. It's been so good.
Yeah, it's it's weird. I helped my brothers move a couple weeks ago. The day that it snowed, we got about 6-7 inches of snow, and we had to move across the city. And
Oh my God.
every day the next week it was 70 degrees plus. So that's just New England. That's just how that goes.
That figures. Yeah, that day we only got like a light, not even a dusting. It didn't stick at all. I saw a few flakes coming down, and that was about it. But I guess you guys got hammered down in Massachusetts.
Oh yeah, yeah. When I got up in the morning, I was like, all right, it's not too bad, and brought my wife to work because her car isn't great in the snow, and I'm like, I'm up already. I'll bring you to work. And yeah, it was interesting. Like it started coming down heavy.
Yeah, the weather's so confusing with the warm air. It's like the leaves are actually jumping back up into the trees.
Yeah,
So,
it's killing my allergies. Like
oh my God, yeah.
playing back and forth, and I keep seeing all these bugs coming back and forth, and it's like, oh, just all the bugs should just go away, and then
I know. Or just be 70 degrees all year. What's wrong with that? Is that too much to ask? I don't know.
yeah, right.
Okay, so today's films are The Invincible Shaolin from 1978 by the Shaw Brothers and Death Rides a Horse from 1967 starring Lee Van Cleef. So for those of you who don't know, spaghetti westerns are western movies that are made in Italy from the 1960s to the 1980s. And they are much darker and grittier than American westerns, not always with happy endings. The Shaw Brothers is a production company from Hong Kong, and they were made famous worldwide with their amazing, insane martial arts films, also from the 60s to the 80s, and they're still active today, actually. So, Pat, can you tell us your experiences in the past with spaghetti westerns and or Shaw Brothers movies?
Well, I can tell you, it'll be real quick because I really didn't have any. Like I might have seen some of this stuff like on TV in passing, but as a kid, westerns weren't really my thing, and if I was going to watch something poorly dubbed, it was going to be a Godzilla film.
There you go.
I mean, because even some of the dialogue in the spaghetti westerns here in Death Rides a Horse was poorly dubbed.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was an interesting experience, watching this now at nearly 40 and never having seen any of these in the past. But I mean, we'll get into it. But
Right. Yeah, I was just curious. So this was the first time seeing both movies. Was for this podcast.
Correct.
For you. Okay. Yeah, and I grew up on westerns. I grew up particularly on American westerns, but I remembered seeing spaghetti westerns. I knew as a kid there was a difference, and I just didn't at the time know what it was. And of course, we always had growing up. There was like a kung fu theater on Channel 68 in Boston, and so I saw a lot of these films. But again, the Shaw Brothers is just one company among many in China. So there were a ton of martial arts films that came out. So the martial arts films and the spaghetti westerns all hit the theaters in America, particularly the grindhouse theaters. And one thing, speaking of grindhouse, that I wanted to bring up is that you and I both watched the films on Amazon Prime, and the version of the Death Rides a Horse was terrible. I have a DVD of it, and it was the same exact quality. And so I felt really bad. I'm like watching it, and we're getting down to the podcast, and I'm like, oh man, it's like a real shitty quality film for you to watch. So I was curious what your experience was with that, because I kind of just had to pretend I was in a grindhouse theater watching a shitty copy of a film.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much what I went with. It's just watching it like it was 1967. Watching it like it was something that you were seeing for the first time in one of these types of theaters. I thought it helped the experience, to be honest. Because if I'm watching something from 1967, it doesn't have to be this pristine, super polished film. If
Right.
it's kind of dingy and grimy, especially that opening scene, opening 10-15 minutes, I think it worked really well with the overall aesthetic.
I have to agree with that. I definitely thought that worked. I was really trying to get into it, and that really, it almost was like a horror movie with the thunder and lightning and the rain and all that.
Yeah, yeah, and it's that was one of the things I was thinking about. Watching the rain and the thunder and everything, and it's like man, I was thinking about how they would do those effects, back in 1967 compared to the massive sets that they do now, and
Right.
it's it gives you more of an appreciation for what the actors had to go through 50 years ago than what they have to go through now.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And it was interesting too, though. If it's such a stark difference between that and then the Invincible Shaolin, which was a pristine widescreen copy and something that probably would have looked shitty on the screens when it was in the grindhouses.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I definitely could tell that the aspect ratio was weird. Like there was one shot where they were kind of panning from left to right, and it was almost like the picture on the film was too big to be shown on the screen, and like it had this really like janky transition from left to right. It was almost like the image itself was trying to reformat on the fly so it would fit on the screen correctly, which I
Right,
thought
right.
was interesting. But
In,
again,
in which film?
Invincible Shaolin.
Right. Okay. Yeah. 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 And it was too bad that Death Rides a Horse was not widescreen, because that could have really been helped with a widescreen version there. So, on this show, we are on a journey of exploration about the stuff that we've just been talking about. We're going to learn about both types of filmmaking: the spaghetti westerns, which is a genre of movies, whereas the Shaw Brothers was a company that specialized in one particular genre, which was the martial arts films, although they did make tons of other movies that just didn't fall into that category. But one of the great things about the Shaw Brothers films, and particularly producer Run Run Shaw, was their diasporic approach, and that is the spreading of their culture. They wanted people to see movies that reflected honor and loyalty and sometimes vengeance. And those three things we also have in common in spaghetti westerns. And spaghetti westerns have a lot of similarities with the Shaw Brothers films, as we've kind of discussed in the last two episodes, and we'll continue to get into as we move along in these shows. One of the big things was, and I'm sure, Pat, this was obvious to you, the sound in both movies. Generally speaking, for spaghetti westerns and Shaw Brothers, they never recorded sound when they were shooting the movie. They always dubbed in the voices later on, whether it was in the original language or the dubbing, and the sound effects and everything. And I think sometimes that can work to its advantage, and sometimes to a disadvantage. But one of the things in common with both of these films today is the theme of vengeance. So first up, we're going to talk about Invincible Shaolin. So Pat, I'm going to ask you to bear with me here, because sometimes these films get really confusing with the actors, who often go by different names, the characters that have different names. Can I ask, when you watched it, did you happen to put even though it was in English, did you happen to put the subtitles on?
No, I didn't, because I was like, all right,
Okay.
what do we like? Because I was waiting to see what it was first, and when I saw
Right.
that, like they would have the translations come up, and then everybody started speaking, I was like, okay, I will. I'll just go with this with the dubs.
I watched it with the subtitles as well as being in English, because I found in the past, and I probably should have told you this ahead of time, a lot of times they'll say a character's name on the screen, and they'll say it one way, and it will be a different way in the subtitling. Thankfully, that didn't happen this time around. Everything was pretty accurate to what they were saying. But these movies, for some reason, there's something, I don't know, lost in the translation somewhere along the way, and it gets really confusing. And if you go to the Hong Kong Movie Database and you look these films up, and you pick a particular actor, he's got like 7 or 8 other names that he goes by under it. So it can make things really confusing, especially when it's in a different language. And it's bad enough trying to remember English names. Then you've got to remember all these Chinese names. So I'm going to get into this movie right now, and so bear with me, Pat, as I sort of break it down with a brief synopsis, and then I'll talk a little bit about the actors, and then we'll dive into the film. Okay?
Okay, that sounds like a plan.
All right, cool. So this is another film produced by Run Run Shaw, and it was directed by the great Chang Cheh. And we're not going to talk about him very much right now. We are going to try and do a special show about him because he's directed hundreds of these movies, and we'll talk about his directing in the film, but not about his career today.
Since director Chang Cheh introduced the techniques of the Hongs in the great epic Heroes 2, with the tiger vanquishing boxing and the tiger and crane styles, Kung Fu films have entered a new era with detailed Kung Fu practice and complex maneuvers. All based on historical facts, these are authentic martial arts, real fights. And now Chang Cheh's new boxing epic, Invincible Shaolin, a new breakthrough. The deadly Manta style is depicted in detail. The most fantastic fighting ever seen on the screen. Starring Lo Bang, who's practiced the Manta style for years. C is a scaly anteater. The grinding nose. Muscle building technique. 4 fists. Reversible hammer. Monkey step. 9-step. The breathing exercise. The 3-step arrow. Romance, Herculean strength, combined with a genuine Manta skill. The Yung Chun style. Wei Pai starts his practice at the post. The different maneuvers. Arms against the post. All aimed at countering the enemy's skill. Bo Chui's fishtail pole. Yang Cheng's butterfly pole. Lu Feng's palm. And Sun Tian's kick. All these extraordinary skills depicted in this masterpiece of Kung Fu epic, Invincible Shaolin.
So here's the plot synopsis. We've got the evil General Pu, or Zhu, who was played by Wang Lung Wei, or if you look it up online, he's also Lung Wei Wang, so you have to pick which one you want to go with. He comes up with a brilliant plan to rid the Qing Empire once and for all of the Shaolin masters. Apparently, Shaolin Kung Fu, or Kung Fu of any kind, is severely restricted under their law. The general invites 3 northern Shaolin experts to his mansion and has them fight in a contest against 3 novice southern Shaolin men who are already teachers at his mansion. If the 3 northerners win, then they'll be the teachers for the Royal Army. By royal decree, Shaolin was required to supply experts to teach the Qing troops martial arts, even though Shaolin training was not to be given to the average citizen. The northern Shaolin experts easily and decisively win against the southern Shaolin men. After the contest, the general visits the southern Shaolin men in their quarters later that night and secretly kills them with his bare hands. He then has his subordinate go to the south Shaolin, placing the blame squarely on the northerners. The southern teacher of the dead disciples, Mai Qi, played by Chang Cheh, is deceived into believing that the northern experts killed his disciples. This would begin an internal conflict between both north and south Shaolin schools. The southern teacher sends 3 more students, one of which is his son, to avenge the first 3. Sadly, his son and one of the other students are accidentally killed by the northerners, and the third one returns with a broken arm and ultimately kills himself out of guilt. Things escalate as Mai Qi disperses his students temporarily, warning them that if they go seeking trouble, they will be expelled. He knows that the pupils he has do not have the skills to defeat the 3 northern teachers, and so he gathers his remaining son and 2 former students to exact a plan for revenge. Mai Qi sends his son and one of his former students off to 2 other teachers for training that he cannot give them, as he is elderly and failing in health. He is able to teach one of his former students, and when all the training is completed, all 3 students are ready to face the northern Shaolin teachers. Mai Qi sends the 3 fully trained students to fight the teachers right after the 3 teachers' wedding celebration to 3 girls. The northern Shaolin teachers start to realize that they've been played by the general, and he wants to see all Shaolin defeated and excised from China. The north and south Shaolin warriors engage in combat, but eventually realize they're all being played by the general. The general and his troops jump into the fray, and it's total chaos as all-out combat ensues and no one ends up the winner. Okay, whew. That was the plot. So, first impressions, Pat, what'd you think of the movie?
I liked the fight choreography. I liked the characters. Like, they were very human. Like, you see a lot of these martial arts films, especially now, and everyone's just an unstoppable, fighting machine, and like there's no humanity to them. You see these guys, and there's, they're flirting with girls, they're going out to eat, and then obviously there's a lot of the combat stuff as well. But even during the combat, they have the good, fun personalities. I enjoyed this quite a bit. I wasn't sure what I was going to think about it, but I'm definitely really glad I watched it. And one of the things that I do is whenever I'm watching something, especially something new, I will post about it on social media, because my goal is to average a movie a day, and I'm up to about 353 now with these 2.
Good heavens, that's awesome.
Well, I have a couple of friends who are close to 500, so I'm way behind them. But wow. I'm close. And a friend of mine...
Well, this show will definitely help you rack up points.
Yes. Well, yeah, a friend of mine is commented on it, saying she's a huge fan of the Venoms, Philip Kwok and Chang Cheh.
Yes. Yep.
And she just is like, oh yeah, you got to watch. What did she say? Crippled Avengers, Kid with the Golden Arm, yes. 5 Deadly Venoms, and she was talking about
right. Well,
what did you say?
Go ahead. Well, I was going to say, episode 1 we covered we covered 5 Deadly Venoms, and then last episode we covered Cripple Avengers. Yeah,
and I added those to my watch list because now I want to see more of these.
And that's awesome.
Lo Meng, who in this movie is credited as Meng Lo, or
right.
He was Chu, who did the Mantis style. He's apparently the last one that's still alive from all these, and he was in the Ip Man movies with Donnie Yen.
Oh wow! Okay.
He's still doing his thing, which is really cool. Probably because I did Kung Fu for a few years. I studied Kung Fu, and I studied Northern-style praying mantis. So this was right in my wheelhouse, so to speak. The training regiment that Chu went through were slightly different from what I did.
Right. No, it is harsh.
Yeah, I didn't have rubber bands attached to me while I hurled cement blocks at trees.
Right.
But at the same time, I also wasn't fighting for my honor.
Right. So let's give the audience a little bit of insight into what we're talking about with the actors here. The film, first of all, was known as North Shaolin versus Shaolin. North Shaolin versus South Shaolin in Hong Kong. And in America, it was released under an alternate title called Unbeatable Dragon. The main actors in this film were part of what was called the Venom Mob. And again, for those who don't know, there are the six actors that were in the Five Deadly Venoms, which we covered in episode 1. And they often, after the Five Deadly Venoms, they often acted together. And they were childhood friends. They were all the main choreographers in all their films. And they're all highly skilled Chinese weapons experts, talented actors, and excellent acrobats. Like we just said, we last covered them in Crippled Avengers. However, the Venom Mob first returned to movies after the Five Deadly Venoms, before Crippled Avengers. So this movie that we're watching was filmed between Five Deadly and Crippled. So it was the first return of what are called the Venom Mob. Like I said before, these actors have several different names, so we're going to try and simplify things. It's not quite as confusing as Crippled Avengers, where I had to have a list in the show notes for people to understand who was who, because they all kind of looked and dressed the same in that movie, and in this one they didn't, which was helpful. The Venom Mob are comprised of the following actors. We've got Chang Cheh, who he played the student in the Venoms, and he was the crazy guy in Crippled Avengers, and he's Chun Fei, a.k.a. Yang Zhangfei, in this movie. He's the guy with the pole. Then we've got Philip Chung Fung Kwok, or we like to call him just Philip Kwok, who my son, actually, Spency Domepiece, a part-time co-host, he likes to refer to him as the Asian cousin of Jared Padalecki, because he kind of looks like him. So they could almost be brothers, I think.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, that's how I remember who he is. So he went by, in this movie, his acting credit was Kuo Chui. Pardon me if I'm butchering these names. I'm trying to do a good job. But he's Philip Kwok, and he was the lizard in the Venoms, and here he plays Ho Yen Wu, or Hei Ying Wu. Then we got Lo Meng, as you just mentioned, who was the Toad in Venoms. And you mentioned that he was Chu. In this, I saw him referred to as Ho Ming Pao and Zhang Cheng here. Then we've got Wei Pei, who was the snake in the Venoms. He plays Mai Feng here, who was the son of the teacher, Mai Qi. Then we've got Sun Chen, who was the scorpion in the Venoms. He played Su Fang, also called Zhu Fang. And then Lu Feng, who was the centipede in the Venoms. He was Pao Xiao Tung here, or Bao Shangjiang. He was, Bao was sort of the, he was the one of the northern three that wore the black vest and was really tough. So those are the guys, and let's get into the movie, Pat. You know, you've got the general who doesn't like the Shaolin, and I was a little confused on that because I didn't know the history of what was going on there.
Yeah, see, and I was learning about this myself as the movie progressed. So apparently there was some sort of... my guess is it was to keep people from rising up in revolt, so that if only the military knew the martial arts, then they would have, access to all the weapons and the training, and that common people wouldn't have the opportunity to learn any way to either defend or, mount a rebellion.
Right, and the government was referred to as the Xings, and there was a reference later in the film to the Mings, like having the Ming. I guess the Shaolins didn't like the Xings, and they wanted the Mings to return to their dynasty, if you will.
Yes, yeah, like they were like one group overpowered the other or forced them out. My Chinese history is not super great. As the
same here.
As the movie progressed, you could definitely see that. My guess is that the general didn't want anyone to learn anything, because that way, the general, for all intents and purposes, would be the real power in China.
Right.
Kind of the way, like in to use a Game of Thrones reference, that when Tywin Lannister was Hand of the King, he was the one really in charge of the kingdom. Like, obviously
Right.
there was a king, but he was a guy with all the money and the armies, so he was the one who had the power.
Right. And the general here is sort of pitting the North and South against each other, hoping they'll wipe each other out.
Yeah, and slowly we see them, like you were saying, like the first time that they match up against each other, they're overmatched, and it's like, hey, like let's just go easy on here, and dude ended up getting his ribs exploded.
And when he brings them in, he's got the three teachers. You got Bo, Sue, and Chun. And when they first come in, he's like, all right, I want you to meet the other three teachers and kind of, spar with them. And, if you defeat them, you become the teachers. But just show us what you got first. And he's got these three wooden dummies. And the first guy hits the dummies with his hands. And just I don't even know how to describe it. Like the outer bark, if it's wood or whatever, of it just falls off in hand shapes.
Yeah, he just
them.
He puts both his hands on it, and yeah, it's almost like the outer edge of the practice dummy.
Yeah,
like the shellacked outer
right,
outer part of it. Yeah, like the bark, for lack of a better term.
Right, and then the other guy, which Su Feng, who just he just kicks the head right off of the other one, and. Let me look back here. The actor who played him, that was Sun Chen, and his style was kicking a lot. And like we had mentioned in the previous episode, they didn't quite show him too much in that movie because that's all he really could do was kick. Whereas the other guys were really, they could do almost any acrobatics at any fighting style, and his main thing was kicking. But in this movie, it was kind of pivotal because when you get to the point where you've got them training the southern three, one of them, they each have to be pitted against one of the northern guys, and the guy who's pitted against the southern guy has to learn how to defend against the kicking and counteract that.
Yeah. If you look at the IMDb page, it not only has the character but also their specific style. So for Liu Fang, it says Chin Kan Palm.
Right.
And, Sun Chen is whirlwind kick, and then there's butterfly pole and fishtail pole and so on.
Yeah. So as we go through the movie, so you've got the three northern teachers, they come in, and then you've got Chun Fei, who with the pole, as you said, and he just stabs the statue, or the dummy with the pole.
Yeah, just right through it.
Right through it. And it was clear from the beginning that neither the North nor the South, that they wanted to work for the general. They didn't want to teach for him, but the law kind of said they had to, and the Shaolin Kung Fu schools were severely restricted. So the North guys beat the three South teachers and send them packing, but then, of course, the general kills them. And it's funny because I'm watching this going, why does he need these guys to teach his troops when he can literally just touch you with his hand and you drop dead?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a classic, political strategy, when it comes to warfare, like pit your enemies against each other, create conflict, and then be the one who comes in and resolves the conflict. Therefore, you are the hero.
Exactly.
He's brutal.
So he sends the three bodies back with, yeah, it was really brutal. And I find it interesting, too, that the Shaw brothers used the same kind of red paint for blood as the Hammer films did, as well as George Romero in Dawn of the Dead, which it kind of lessens the blow because this movie's pretty harsh, violently.
Yeah, especially even the scene with when the guy gets his arm broken, and they just put red on his elbow. It's like, oh, there, I can tell you're hurt, and everybody's always like the effects weren't fantastic, but like there were definitely some scenes that they were like they kind of ignored the stuff that happened. It's like, oh, you just suffered this catastrophic injury. Yeah, I'm sure you can fight 60 guys. Like, that's fine.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, these guys all did their own stunts, and a lot of them were actually, like I said before, they were the stunt coordinators for these fight scenes, so they knew what they were doing. But yeah, they did stretch the credibility when, towards the end, when what's his name, was it Bo, that got his like chest ripped open, and then he goes on and fights like 50 of those guys.
Yeah, like he literally like he had his hands on the guy's chest and just kind of like tore it aside like one of those sliding doors. You're just like opening a sliding door, and he's like, "Oh!" And then you had Su Feng, who's like, "Oh, I'm dying and I can barely speak, but I'm gonna go fight for 15 minutes."
Right.
He's got this massive abdominal wound.
Yeah. Thought he was dead. And then what's his name is running around with the pole sticking out of his stomach.
Yeah. Like it's like, what are you doing? Like, no, I'm fine.
It's a flesh wound.
Yeah, right? But yeah, it was fairly brutal.
Yeah. Yeah, which I think was good that they used the that fake looking blood, because it would have been much more gruesome with realistic looking blood.
Yeah.
So we've got the general, right? Like we said, he kills those 3 guys and he sends them back home, claiming, and this confused me when I first watched it, because, I don't know, his subordinate, who's also a general, I don't know how that works, General Hua, sends him with the 3 guys, and he's telling the South guys, oh yeah, they sparred and then they died in their sleep. And I personally, just watching it the first time, I got confused by, I didn't understand why he was saying that, and then I realized, oh yeah, they're pitting the South against the North. So that causes the teacher, Mikey from the South, to get angry, and he wants to get revenge on them. So he sends 3 more guys up to the North to replace the teachers and, hopefully defeat the Northern guys. And, and it was interesting how the North guys, they really didn't want to fight. The leader kept saying, no, can we just talk about this? You don't understand. We suspect something's not right here.
Yeah, Su Feng kept saying, like, yeah, this isn't right. Let's talk about this. They're like, no, let me break this table and fight you.
Right. Oh, my God. So, yeah, the 3 guys, 2 of them die, and one of them is Mikey's son. And that's when he just basically says to his students, you got to go. I'm going to disperse you, because there's no way you're going to defeat these guys, and don't go seeking trouble, because you'll just get expelled. And so we don't really see it. I guess off screen, he somehow calls in his 2 former students, because he's got his other son. But I thought that was interesting that they kind of glossed over that all of a sudden these 2 guys just show up, and they're like, oh yeah, Master, we're here to help you. It's like, okay, what?
Yeah, like I was a little confused by that. It's like, all right, whatever. Like, they probably heard about it, somebody told them, and here they are.
Right. And before that, you got Zhu Yin, who is this chick who's sort of the servant. She's ordered by the general to serve the 3 teachers, and they all kind of like her. But it was really, it was Su Feng that was really into her? Yeah. So I thought that was interesting, because up to this point, the 2 movies that we've covered, and I know you haven't seen them yet, but there were no females really in it. And even then, in this movie, the females that were in it were ancillary characters. They weren't part of the main action that was going on, with the exception of when the 2 fruit girls were being accosted by one of the southern Shaolin guys, and they stepped in. Oh no, I'm sorry. They were being accosted by the guards, and the southern Shaolin guy stepped in and saved them.
Yes. And then, even then, that kind of almost caused a problem with the northern guys. But they were like, no, we're not here to fight you. Like, those guys, we're not with them.
Right. And I thought that was interesting, too, because it showed you, even again, you've got 2 encounters now with 2 of the guys from the South, and they're nice guys. And when they meet these guys, yeah, okay, they do a little sparring in the street, and then they're cool with it. And they're like, hey, you're awesome, and, you're awesome, and I'm not going to tell you my name, but that's okay. And, they were friendly to begin with, and until they found out that they were rivals. And then it kind of, things changed for a little bit.
Right. Because, they just wanted to go pay their respects for the deaths of the first 3 students. And...
oh, right.
At that point, it was like, oh, well, you killed them. It's like, we didn't even hit them that hard.
Right.
Like, we specifically tried not to.
Right. The 2 guys were Ho Yen Wu. He was the first guy that comes along. And then the second guy was Ying Wu, the one who stops the guards from harassing the two fruit girls. They encounter Bo Tung and Chun Fei at the fruit stand, and like we said, they both engage in friendly combat. And then they meet up with Mikey, like you said, to pay their respects. And Mikey is still bent on revenge. So he sends Ying Wu, who was the second guy, to another guy named Nan Sham. And I also saw he's got a different name called Wang Lang, and I'm not sure where I got that from, whether it was from the subtitles or online. But he's a master mantis boxer. And Mikey basically tells him that the mantis style is what you need to defeat the Jin Kang Palm style. So you've got, like we talked about, you've got style versus style here. So Mikey, the teacher, sends his son to learn the Young Chung style from a guy named Lung Bei. He's nicknamed the Gardener. And these two other teachers, like, they're kind of like, why are you here? Okay, well, I guess, he's old and creebly, so we'll teach you. But they kind of look the same. So did you find it confusing at first when they were cutting between the training? Yeah.
Yeah, like, I was like, wait a minute. When did this get... And everybody's got the long, like... I was like, oh, it's the guy with the long ponytail. Ah, crap, there's like 4 of them with long ponytails.
Like I said, it was worse in Crippled Avengers, because not only did they all have the same hairstyle, they all wore the same white outfits, so it was very hard to tell who was who.
I mean, Qian's son is easy, because he's got those, like, amazing eyebrows.
Yeah. And that's the good thing about doing this podcast, too, for us, is that as we're watching these films, we get to know the actors, and we see them more often, and it won't be so confusing. But the teachers, the two old guys, they both had the same outfit and the same gray hair. And I think one had more of a rounder face and he had a gap on his bottom teeth, and the other one had a thinner face and a gap on his top teeth. So that was how I was able to kind of tell them apart.
Yeah, I have the same problem when I watch, I watched Green Street Hooligans, and, like, so many of those guys looked exactly the same. It was just like, oh, I'm a Cockney British thug. Like, I don't know who half of you guys... Like, I know Charlie Hunnam and Elijah Wood, and, like, everybody else looks exactly the same.
That's funny. I've never seen that. Oh, man. So what I thought was interesting, so Mikey sends off his son and Ying Wu off to be trained, but then he decides to train Ho Yan Wu himself, which I thought he was too old. But, so he does it anyways. So he doesn't get quite as an intense training sequence as the other two guys get. But I thought the two training sequences with Ying Wu and the son there were really entertaining and really cool. Like, with the exception of the phony stone, weights that were just clearly styrofoam.
Yeah, I mean,
like every rock in this movie was clearly fake.
Oh, and the trees.
Right.
I mean, I liked the repeated egg scenes.
Yes.
Like, that was funny. Like, that was really funny. It's like, oh, I love eggs. It's like, yeah, let's see if you like them 4 months from now when you've eaten them every single day.
Now, that was one part that was confusing me, too, where he said, well, if you break the eggs, you got to eat them. So did he literally, like, scrape the eggs off the edge of the well and then cook them up? Or did he just cook 2 other eggs? Like,
I'm imagining he scraped it off the well. I mean, like, those are the specific eggs. He kept saying, like, you can't waste them.
That was gross, then. But I don't know if he was on wires. It looked like he was really doing that, like doing the push-ups with his fingers.
That is a specific training that you do. You try to, in Mantis Kung Fu, you try to make your fingers and your knuckles as strong as possible because of the different strikes that you use. Like, there are, if you go to, I want to say there are certain training facilities in China where you'll see trees on the outside, and there are little holes all over the tree, and that's from finger strikes.
Oh my God! Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, they did say, I was reading. I have a book. It's called The Ultimate Guide to Martial Art Movies of the '70s, and they did say in that the description of this film that the training sequences that were in here had never been shown on film before. So there were a lot of interesting secrets almost given to the public that had never been seen.
I will say probably some of the training scenes might have been slightly exaggerated, like the one finger push-ups while he was completely vertical. I don't think he was doing that.
I half expected to see Yoda sitting on his foot when.
Yeah, right. Well, I just thought it was funny where, you see his teacher take this gigantic stone that should weigh, 600-700 pounds and just carry it over. It's like, oh, sorry, I'm too old to do this, but let me carry this giant rock and put it on your back.
Oh my God! Yeah, that was so funny. He didn't even make an effort to really make it look heavy. He just lifted it and put it on his back and then took it off.
He was like, oh, this is mildly inconvenient.
Right. Oh, man. So Lung Bei is teaching Mikey's son the Young Chun style, which involves a lot of balance. And he tells him it was created by a woman named Wu Mei. And I thought that was an interesting little tidbit that I thought should have been expanded upon or should have had something to do with the story. I didn't really understand why it was almost like a throwaway line of dialogue unless it was truly accurate historically.
Yeah, see, that I don't know, but I would imagine that it seems accurate. Like if you look at some of the weapons that are used in martial arts, most of them are also used in other walks of life. Like, I believe nunchucks were originally a farming implement for specific. I don't know exactly what they were used for, but all these different things that they do with various weapons. Like, there are fighting techniques for canes. Like, if you're walking around you're an older person with a cane, there are fighting techniques using a cane. Everything.
Right.
It's almost like you use everything that you can as a means of self-defense.
Sort of the way Jackie Chan does. I mean, he walks into a room and anything in there becomes a weapon for him.
Right.
Yeah. So that's pretty awesome. And then the training sequences, they just got more and more intense and heavier weights on the guy's back, and he had put rings on his feet and then stretching with the rubber bands pulling against them. And this is kind of something that's sort of hard to describe on an audio podcast here, but these training sequences they're common in Shaw Brothers films. It's one of those things that you kind of look to expect almost is, okay, so when's the training sequence coming? Because that's going to be awesome. I really thought they did it well here because it wasn't just a throwaway 10-minute montage set to music. It was getting more intense with each guy, and you were just kind of cutting back and forth between each guy and watching what they were going through, even though, visually some of it was kind of silly and unbelievable. You got into it, and the story made it work, I thought.
Yeah, and it wasn't like a quick, like a Rocky montage where it's 5 minutes, if that, just showing slight improvement every time. It was, a pretty sizable chunk of the film, so you could see the actual where they started. It's oh, these guys are in pretty good shape. They can do some pretty cool stuff. And then it's all right, well, now try doing this. And they struggle with it. And, you were talking about with the iron rings, it's all right, put that iron ring on your foot. And, so he puts the iron ring on. He's wearing it's essentially an ankle weight. Right. Then he has to wear 6 or 7 of them. And you can see him doing these great leaps and jumps, and it's all right, now if you take those off, now you're going to be even better. You're going to be faster. And that's again, like you were saying, it's a common training thing where if you train with weights, you're going to be that much faster without them.
Right. Exactly. And so the training sequences were really awesome. And interspersed in there, we had the 3 Northerners that were sort of, or at least 2 of them, that were getting friendly with the girls selling the fruit. Mm-hmm. Those were fun sequences. I thought the girls were really funny. And they didn't take them seriously at first. They were just yeah, you guys are whatever, you're guys.
What if I let you keep the change? Would I be a nice guy then? Nope.
Right. She's like, no, because you're still a guy. You work for the king or the general, but then they had to explain that away. So that all then, what's his name? Was it Son? He's getting closer to the servant girl there, and so ultimately, all three of the Northerners are going to marry all three of the girls, and you've got the three Southern students have completed their training. They return to Mikey, who's now dying, and his last words to them are to make them swear to accept the Shaolin and not accept the Xing. So at that point, I'm watching this going, shit, they're on the fucking same side as the North guys. And now I'm thinking how the movie's going to go is they're going to start to clash, and they're all going to realize, oh shit, we're all on the same side, and then they turn around and it'll be them versus the general and his men, and it didn't quite work that way.
No, and I mean it sort of did, but it was one of those like, I wish we had talked about this 5 minutes ago when we weren't all mortally wounded.
And Son tries at the beginning. He's like, let's not do this, you know. Even Bao offers wine to Ying Wu before they fight, which I thought that was an interesting cultural thing where they drink a cup of wine and then show each other the empty cup.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that signified. I didn't get a chance to look that one up, but I'm curious to know.
I'm guessing it's like they're both like, you know, because obviously wine is going to impair you one way or the other, and it's like, all right, I'm showing you that I'm drinking this, you know, and you know, I'm accepting the fact that I'm going to be slowed or impaired. You know, I'm not going to be my full strength.
Right. So they prove they're equally impaired.
Yeah, I mean that's what I got out of it. Like like you said, I didn't research that either, but that's, I was looking at it like, okay, they're both going in on, like, their skill level might be different, but they're both drinking 3 cups of wine, and so that will put them on even footing.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. So, again, the North is trying not to fight, but the South really are convinced that they want revenge. So the fight begins, and this whole end battle is pretty insane. And, of course, you're biting your nails going, when are these guys going to realize, wise up and realize they're all on the same side? But I just love the fight sequences in the Shaw Brothers movies because it's like a ballet. It's just the style of the way they're shot, especially Chang Cheh's direction, the camera movements he uses. He's not afraid to use wide shots because they're not using stuntmen. They are doing their own stunts. I mean, what did you think of this fight sequence?
I mean, watching all the fight sequences, they're very, very well done. And the only time you'd really see a cut is when someone was doing like one of those ridiculous like flying leaps. Because they were clearly jumping off of something.
Right. On wires.
But one of the things that I learned when I was doing Kung Fu, and I never knew this, is that there is, for every, I don't know about for everything, but for the stuff that I learned, for every sequence of moves, say there's like we would learn like a 10 or 15 sequence set of moves.
Mm-hmm.
There is an opposite side to that. So like anytime you would see like, oh, like these guys, like they're doing this, it's clearly, choreographed, but they're like, no, if we're doing, this set of moves, you're going to do the opposite set. Like there was for every offensive attack, there was a defensive set of moves as well. And we would practice that. We would practice both sides. We'd almost like sparring, where it's like, okay, this first move is I'm going to throw a punch, then block, then a sweeping chop, and like the other side was, a block, a counter, and then like you duck your head underneath. Like it's really interesting, So it's not just, oh, we're making up a bunch of moves. It's
right.
This is how the training went, and if you're able to recognize, it's like, okay, I see this first 3 moves, I know what the next 5 moves are going to be and how to counter that. And like your muscle memory takes over.
Oh, absolutely, and I think that was kind of the point too of the Southern guys was learning, like for example, where the Mantis was the counter to the Jin Kang Palm.
Yes.
So they each had their own counter to the three
Hmm.
Northerners. So it made them equals, and it was funny because like as the movie's progressing, I'm watching it and I'm like, the three Northerners were good. They proved they were awesome, but I was afraid they were a little cocky, and I was worried that they would eventually encounter something that they wouldn't be able to deal with, and they did, but they weren't cocky about it. They walked into it knowing that okay, we're gonna really have the fight of our lives on our hands here.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't just, you know, we're going to, uh, we're going to just, roll over these guys like we did before. Like, and they can tell as soon as they start, uh, doing their movements and start, with their, uh, with their fighting that, okay, these guys have gotten significantly better since the last time we saw them, a few months ago. So, and that's another thing that I learned, because I was very new and I wanted to see. I was like, oh, I think I can, hold my own against somebody. So we did a sparring session, and there was a gentleman who had 10 years of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and 6 years of Kung Fu, and was a black belt in both of them. And I was like, I want to see how I do against this guy. And he's like, well, that's fine. He goes, but I'm going to tell you, however hard you go against me is how hard I will go against you. Like if you give 50%, I'll give 50%. But if you give 100%, I'm going to give 100%. I'm like, well, guess you got to go big or go home. And I learned quite a bit. Like those extra 16 years compared to my 16 lessons. Yeah, that's a huge difference. Uh, but it does tell you, because I did manage to land a pretty good strike, and he actually congratulated me on it afterwards. He's like, "Yeah, you got me like a really good kidney shot. Like that was really good." Um, but
Wow.
he like I was pretty like even with all the sparring gear, I got pretty battered. I ended up with a nosebleed. Like he hit me in the face. He's like, "Oh my god!" I'm like, "It's fine. I'm okay." I wanted to see what my skill level was, and like they were all like the teachers were worried I was going to quit. I was like, no, like he didn't ask me to spar. I asked him, and he told me what was going to
Right.
happen. I was very well informed. Like I was pretty sure I was going to get my ass kicked. I just wanted to see how I could handle it. Like, I took several punches to the face and chest, and like he was so much faster than me and he was so much stronger than me. But like that was the thing. It's like I get where these guys are coming from. It's like, all right, I know where my skill level is, and I will, you know, only go up to a certain point to match your skill level. And then they realized we have to step our game up in a big way because their skill level is higher.
Right. And I liked how in the fight, even though we really didn't need it, I think maybe the audience back in, 76, 78 needed it, was when they would flash back to the training montages so you could see how they were applying what they learned in the combat at hand. I was like, all right, we don't really need that, but okay, yeah, I get
Yeah,
it.
but they do that in, lots of movies, though. Like, Karate Kid, like, they
Yeah.
did that quite a bit. Um,
Oh, that's true.
and that's kind of what this reminded me of. It's like, all right, Karate Kid is definitely taking a lot of these unorthodox training methods, uh, applying them slightly differently. And it's obviously it's different because karate is Japanese and kung fu is Chinese. Um, so there's a difference there, but it's the unorthodox training methods and the building up of muscle memory in various ways. That I mean these guys in Invincible Shaolin knew that they were training a specific way, and they had trained before, so they knew that there was going to be some weird stuff. Like every time you lose your balance, you have to plant new flowers. Like
Right. That was awesome.
And like every time you see the guy, like his face is all covered with dirt, or like every time you break an egg, you have to eat the egg. Like that's, even the last time was the best. The last one was the best. I did it. I didn't break the egg.
Describe that for the audience.
Like he was all excited and he was like, "Yes, I did it. I didn't break the egg this time." And then he clenched his hand and crushed the egg. Like, eggs for dinner.
That was good. And I loved the training machine that he had, where it was basically to train first he was training his arms to really be able to withstand anything, and then it was his body to be able to take care of the arms. And he had that device. I can't even describe it. It's a pole, and then a thing that swings around it, and it's got sort of a mallet on each end.
He called it the mill.
And so when he pushes one side, the mill, right? And so he pushes one side or hits one side, the other side hits him in the back, and vice versa. And it was funny because the first few times he did it, he was surprised every time. Like, you think he would figure it out like pretty quickly.
I think with that, he didn't expect it to get him as quickly as it did. So like, part of what that I think was supposed to do was train him to hit and turn around and block. It's almost like you're training to fight multiple people with that type of device.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But like,
as well as like physically take the punishment.
Like, you're getting hit in the back, you're getting hit in the stomach. I mean, that's how Houdini died. He took a sucker punch to the stomach and like it killed him.
Yeah.
Because that's, you got all your liver, your kidneys, taking shots there is not what you want.
Yeah. So this end fight was just intense and insane. And then ultimately, once the North and South both kind of realize, even though half of them are dying, they realize they're on the same side, that's when the general jumps into the fight. And the shit gets real.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's, like we were saying earlier, it's crazy because there's so many mortal injuries that these guys have faced. One guy's got the pole sticking through his stomach. The other guy has his chest ripped open.
Right.
Another guy's got like this huge slash across his stomach, and he's like, "Oh, I'm dying." And as I'm dying, I can tell you this, and it's like, I never meant to kill your brother. It was an accident. My bad. Like, it's like, oh, maybe you weren't such a jerk after all. And again, like, I wish someone would have said this 5 minutes ago. It's like, we tried. You guys wouldn't listen. You were all revenge, revenge, revenge.
Yeah. So at the very end, everybody, including the general, dies, except for Mai Feng and Ying Wu, and they get away at the end. And I'm watching it, and I'm like, that's it?
Yeah, they just run away, and, like, they're still running, and it's like, all the credits come up. It's like, yeah, but what happened? Like, did they get away? There were hundreds of soldiers. Did they escape? Like, what happened to the women? Like, the women were still in that courtyard. Like, what?
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah.
I have to say, I did not like that ending. I didn't like the way they ended it just abruptly.
No, it was a really weird ending where it just stopped. I was like, what?
Yeah. Like, literally, that's all the money we have for film. We're all done.
It's like, oh, you want to know what happens? Too bad. Use your imagination.
Right.
I mean, that would definitely set it up for a sequel where it would be like, the two guys, training their own guys to come back and fight and win, but
right. I didn't see that happening. Okay, so final thoughts on Invincible Shaolin, Pat. What did you think your first real foray into the Shaw Brothers library?
Well, this has a rating of 7 out of 10 based on 958 reviews on IMDb. I'm going to give it an 8. I enjoyed this a lot. It had some of the, ridiculous over-the-top stuff that you would expect from these types of films. Like the crazy training montage where it's like, oh, I've got all these rubber bands on me, but I'm still strong enough to hurl boulders at a tree and destroy it. Like, obviously that's over the top, and it's definitely like, really It's like, oh, look how intense this training is. So this is how I'm able to do all these amazing things. It's like, yeah, that's fine. Like, I expected that. My only real issue is that on a lot of the fight scenes, despite the obvious skill of all these guys, especially when there were multiple people involved, they were clearly not hitting each other. Like, you'd see a kick or a punch that was a good foot away from someone, and they'd get knocked backwards. That's like,
Right.
You guys did such a good job when it was one-on-one, and then when they have all these, I mean, maybe the extras that were playing the soldiers weren't as good. They weren't as highly skilled. That would be my guess, and they didn't want anybody getting hurt.
Yeah, probably.
But fix the camera angle a little bit and make it at least seem realistic. This should look better than a Power Rangers battle. But that's really the only criticism. I thought the characters were fun, and one of the things that you can't control, because this was dubbed, some of the voices just didn't seem to match the characters.
No, like the son.
And I'm not talking about he started talking and then his lips are still moving but there's no sound coming out. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about
I know
actual voice. It's you have this big huge guy. It's like, hi, my name's Gary. It's like, no, that's. It's like, no.
Or the son was like, we're going to get revenge on him, Dad.
Yeah. Oh.
It's like, no, he should have a little bit more of a
See,
manly
I think
voice.
what they're doing, especially with the inferior general there, they give him this whiny, weaselly voice to kind of almost as another character trait to show you this is really what this guy is like.
Yeah, this would have been a good movie to watch in the original Chinese with English dubs, with English subtitles. I find sometimes, I enjoy foreign films more if I can hear the original language, but sometimes I don't feel like reading. But these days, I put the subtitles on everything just because I'm tired of going to my wife, what did he say? What'd she say? And rewinding the damn show. It's I just throw the subtitles on and I can just see and hear everything all at
I think
once.
another good rule for that is if you have something that's subtitled and dubbed, like one of my favorite films, Akira, what they're saying and what the subtitles are can be different.
Yes, I have noticed that quite a bit.
But it's all dependent on what is the exact translation, because there are phrases and terms, especially slang terms, that simply don't translate. I saw this list of terribly translated tattoos where it was this young lady wanted to get I think it was the Chinese characters for butterfly, but there wasn't there's nothing for butterfly, so they did butter and fly, the little guy that buzzes around. And so it's that's technically what it says, but that's not what it means. It does say butterfly, but not the way you want it to say it. So there's little interesting things like that where there's not always an exact translation for it, which I think is kind of cool, especially where you're trying to translate it into different languages for different audiences.
Exactly. Like I said before in a different episode of a different show, I think, I have a movie I picked up on DVD recently from Kino called Live Like a Cop, Die Like a Man. And it's an Italian cop, ultra-violent cop movie directed by Ruggero Deodato, who did Cannibal Holocaust. And I watched it with the English dub and the English subtitles, and the English subtitles were verbatim translations of the Italian, whereas the dub was actually really good, and they made the dialogue more colloquial at using phrases that English-speaking people would understand better than if it was just, this car drives well. It was whoa, it's, he's loose as a goose, something like that. It's all in the translation, and I think, that sometimes these movies can suffer from that.
Yeah, and I think also part of it is trying to form what someone is saying around the mouth movements of the original actor also can contribute to something sounding off.
Yeah. So overall, I think we both enjoyed this movie. I was very disappointed with the ending, but I love Chang Cheh's direction. I highly recommend people should go out and see it if you haven't already. It's Invincible Shaolin. Right now, it's available on Prime.
Yep.
And so is the next film we're going to talk about, Death Rides a Horse. But we're going to take a quick break here. And then when we return, we will jump over to Italy and talk about a spaghetti western.
Prepare for a spine-tingling, nerve-shattering podcast featuring all your favorite monsters. You won't believe your ears when you listen to Monster Kid Radio. Hear your host, Derek M. Cook, and his ever-rotating stable of guests discuss your favorite classics and sometimes not-so-classic monster movies. Subscribe to Monster Kid Radio through iTunes or Stitcher, or visit monsterkidradio.net before the next weekly episode of Monster Kid Radio. Go through the archives for interviews with Sarah Karloff, Victoria Price, and Joel Hodgson. Listen to discussions about movies like Creature from the Black Lagoon, Island of Terror, and King Kong. And don't forget convention coverage from Monster Bash and the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival. Classic Monsters, Modern Talk, and the head of Rondo Hatton. Only on Monster Kid Radio.
Hey folks, I just wanted to take a minute here to tell you about the hosting service that we use at Haven Podcasts. Podserve.fm. Podcast hosting has never been easier. They do all the work to get your podcast on Apple Podcasts and other major podcast networks. They help you navigate the podcasting world, whether you're brand new or have years of experience. Folks, I can't tell you how happy I am with their service. When I first started this podcast, I searched around intensely for the right hosting platform. I found Podserve and used their simple 4-step process, and in a short amount of time, my podcasts were on the internet and available through all the major podcast networks. And their customer support is unreal. Every time I goof things up and make a mistake, like posting the wrong show to the wrong feed, I email them, and I kid you not, within minutes I get a response and the problem is resolved. And they're the only podcasting host that actually helps you get listeners. Other podcast hosts stop at podcast upload and don't help promote your podcast. Well, Podserve makes sure your podcast is seen by thousands of people. The promotion is free, and they put you on podparadise.com, which has over 5,000 visits a day from avid podcast listeners and is growing every day. Each day, Pod Paradise selects 5 podcasts to spotlight on their front page. Maybe yours could be there soon. Podserve's pricing is simple. Only $19 a month. That's it. No tiered pricing platform, just one low fee. For $19 a month, you get unlimited storage, unlimited podcasts, free podcast promotion, your podcast on all platforms, detailed download analytics, one-on-one customer support. You pay month to month, and you can cancel at any time. And when you sign up, you get 14 days free. You don't even have to give them your credit card. I love their service so much I put a reminder in my phone to add my credit card when the 14 days was almost up. I couldn't give them my $19 fast enough. I'm telling you, I really didn't believe it until I actually signed up and saw my podcasts on everything from iTunes to Stitcher and Spotify and more in a ridiculously short amount of time. So if you've got a podcast and you don't have a hosting platform, I highly recommend podserve.fm. Check them out.
Hello, this is Rod Barnett. I'm the host of The Bloody Pit, the podcast that examines films from across the decades. On The Bloody Pit, we have several ongoing series of shows within the show focused on specific things in genre cinema that I and my co-hosts find fascinating. There's a long-running series focused on Italian maestro Antonio Margheriti's films from the 1960s all the way up through 1990. There's an on-again, off-again series focused on 1970s science fiction films. There's an in-depth look at the Western movies that William Castle made before he struck out on his own and became the horror auteur that we know and love. A look at the classic Coffin Joe films from Brazil. And our long-term project to look at every Universal horror film made in the 1940s. That's a long project, people. It's going to take us a long time. Sprinkled in amongst those are various other episodes focused on other stranger areas of cinema, like Lucio Fulci, Dario Argento, and even some obscure British crime films from time to time. So join me and my rotating crew of co-hosts as we examine the stranger side of cinema through an exploitation lens. Except when we don't? Yeah, you never really know exactly what to expect on The Bloody Pit. So join me for The Bloody Pit.
Rides a horse. When you've waited 15 years to find a man, it's a shame you can only kill him once. Bandits who killed 5 defenseless people made one big mistake. They should have killed 6. Ever since he was a little boy, there was one thing he always wanted to do: find 4 men and kill them.
Okay, on to our spaghetti western. Today we are talking about Death Rides a Horse, starring Lee Van Cleef. So, Pat, do you want to do the honors and give us a plot synopsis here?
Yeah, absolutely. Bill, played by, the older Bill, played by John Philip Law, which, on a side note, if you're going to be in a western, like, that's probably one of the best names to possibly have.
Exactly.
A boy whose father was killed and mother and sister were raped and murdered in front of him by a gang sets out 15 years later to exact revenge, having used the time to become an expert marksman with a gun. And we get to see him training, and he's very, very good at what he does. Each of the outlaws bears a characteristic that Bill memorized while watching his family be slaughtered and his house set on fire. The first has a tattoo of 4 aces on his chest, the second a scar, the third one a distinctive earring, and the fourth, who was the one who saved young Bill from the burning house, wears a necklace bearing a skull. While he saw the face of the fifth, he never saw the face of the man who saved him from the fire. As Bill begins his journey, a gunfighter named Ryan, played by Lee Van Cleef in a super badass role, is released from a prison after serving 15 years there. He was framed for an armed robbery by the very same man who murdered Bill's family. When they meet along the way, Ryan gets the better of Bill, who is blinded by vengeance, but he does Bill no harm. In the next town, Ryan asks for a man named Kavanaugh, played by Anthony Dawson, whom Bill recognized later as the man with 4 aces tattoo. Bill manages to kill Kavanaugh in a duel, but the more experienced Ryan insists on tracking the other outlaws alone. They cross paths again in Linden City, where Ryan meets rich banker Walcott, played by Luigi Pistilli, and demands his share of the robbery 15 years ago, $1,000 for every year in jail, and demands that he covers Kavanaugh's portion, so he wants $30,000. Walcott stages a robbery on his own bank and frames Ryan. When the tables are turned later, Bill reciprocates, helping Ryan escape from jail. An equally determined Bill sets out ahead of him. Bill reaches a Mexican town where he recognizes the man with the big earring and guns him down. He is captured by the outlaws, beaten and buried alive from the neck down. He had also recognized the man with the scar and Walcott, which is Luigi Pistilli. Left to die in the hot sun, he is rescued by Ryan, who shoots several men standing guard. Preparing for the gang's return, Bill notices that Ryan is wearing a necklace with a skull. Ryan admits he was present during the murders, but insists that he got there late and had nothing to do with what happened to his family. He gives his word that once the outlaws have been dealt with, he will remain to face whatever justice Bill seeks. In a final shootout during a sandstorm, the last remaining man who killed Bill's family has him dead to rights, only to be killed by Ryan's thrown knife. Bill nonetheless insists on revenge. Ryan's gun is empty, so Bill tosses a bullet to him. He has just one bullet left himself now. Ryan turns his back and walks away, daring Bill to shoot him in the back. Bill fires, but only to kill a surviving outlaw. A grateful Ryan then watches as he mounts his horse and rides away. Now,
excellent.
I really, really liked this this film, and
awesome.
The summary that I had was from Wikipedia, but there was definitely some stuff that was missing, so I added a little bit of my own flavor to it.
Yeah, it was good, and I was watching it the other day just to catch. I had seen this before a couple times, and years ago, so it'd been a long time. And as I'm watching it, I'm realizing, and I think that's when I texted you that it was really shitty quality, and I felt bad. I was like, oh God, I hope he doesn't hate the movie, because sometimes that can color a person's opinion of a movie. But I think this movie was so good it didn't matter if it was shitty quality.
Yeah, Ennio Morricone's score, first of all, I'm sorry, Academy Award winner Ennio Morricone. Who you and I have talked about before because he also did the score for The Thing.
Correct.
Partnered with Lee Van Cleef. Like I said, I've never really watched any Westerns, but I recognize Lee Van Cleef. He was so good in this.
Yeah.
He was definitely that scary, almost supernatural type of guy.
Yeah, he was easily like in this role. You could tell he had done it 1,000 times before, and he just fit so perfectly into that character.
Yeah, it was. You kind of put two and two together because they don't show the face of the guy that pulled Bill out of the house, and.
Right.
You kind of put two and two, and obviously, the zooming in on each distinct feature that the gang had. It's one of those things, those movies where it's like, well, I'm after these guys for a specific reason, and this guy's after them for a specific reason, but they both believe that their reason was more valid than the other one. For Bill, his entire family was killed.
Right.
And for Ryan, they framed him and left him, on basically like a Western expansion chain gang, because this is a Western,
right.
So they're, building railroads or building roads or,
right. For 15
very
years.
hard labor. Yeah, for 15 years. And so the first guy, Kavanaugh, is like, well, sorry for your trouble. Here's $100.
Right.
It's like, $100 for 15 years? I even said that out loud. I'm like, $100 for 15 years of his life? And then Lee Van Cleef's like, $100 for 15 years of my life?
Oh man, did you know I had read this a while ago? Lee Van Cleef, when he was in the movie High Noon, he was supposed to have a bigger role, and the director wanted him to get a nose job so he wouldn't look quite like a bad guy, and he's like, no, I'm not fucking doing that. And so he ended up with like a bit part in the film. But
yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, kind of speaking of that though, this definitely had the classic. And I noticed this about his character. He wore the black hat, but he had a white shirt.
Yep, I noticed that too.
And obviously in Westerns, he's got a black hat, he's the bad guy. Oh, he's
Right.
got a white hat. He is the good guy. Like, that's just, the over the top way of showing, like, yeah, this is definitely the good guy. This is definitely the bad guy.
Yeah. And I really liked how they set them up with the way Ryan and Bill meet is when Ryan goes to the grave site near the house of, was it the Macedo family of the, like you said, they're all slaughtered. And you could tell he was feeling bad about what happened. I mean, 15 years went by, and that's the first place he goes. And then, Bill encounters him. He knows, he suspects he may have something to do with it, but, I think it was more on Ryan that really figured out, oh, that's the little kid that I saved, and he's all grown up now. And I think that's why he tries to keep him at arm's length and is constantly stealing his horse throughout the movie, because he doesn't want him to get hurt.
Right, and because he has several chances to kill him, and I do like the when he kills Kavanaugh, and then Ryan steals his horse. And then you get a callback to that later on at the end, and he's like, "Thanks for not taking my horse," or "Thanks for leaving me my horse."
Yeah, and when John Philip Law steals his horse, gives him his gun back. He's like, "Well, you might need this," which is what he had said to him when he stole John Philip Law's horse the first time.
Mm-hmm. And again, I can't get over the fact that his name is John Philip Law, and like he's playing like this vengeful guy. It's like, that's so perfect.
Yeah, I know. He wasn't in a ton of stuff. He was, obviously he was Bill Macedo here. He played the Russian sailor in that hilarious 1966 film, The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming. He was the main character, the title character, in Mario Bava's Danger Diabolic, which was in 1968. And he played the blind angel Pygar in the movie Barbarella, also in 68. So 68 was a big year for me. These 3 movies come out. One other thing he did was he was in the much maligned Otto Preminger film Skidoo, also from 68.
He's a busy guy.
Yeah. I thought his portrayal in this was odd. I thought I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was just something off about him. And I kind of chalked it up to the fact that he probably would be a little off after having witnessed what he did at, age 10? This, mother and sister being raped and the father killed. And
probably
then
younger than that.
Down. Yeah.
I think he was probably like 6 or 7, because I don't think he was more than 21, 22 years old.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's what I got anyways.
So, he seemed odd, though. His mannerisms and his reactions to things weren't like, I don't know. He was, I can't explain it.
Yeah, he definitely had, you could definitely see there was some kind of, almost like post-traumatic stress with him. Because like every time he noticed something or he found something out, he was just like singularly focused. That's it. Everything else doesn't matter. It's funny. The other thing that I thought was interesting was the way the law worked back then, where it's like, the sheriff sitting down playing cards and is just like, "Oh, you're under arrest." Like, he makes no attempt to get up and arrest the guy. Like, "Yeah, you're under arrest. Hey, right. Judge, when can we do a trial?" "I don't know, tomorrow." "All right, good." And then Kavanaugh walks down the stairs. "No, it was self-defense." "All right, all the charges are dropped."
Yeah.
Like, what? Like, that's not how that works.
Or like when the 2 ninja cowboys sneak into Lee Van Cleef's room and he guns them down and the sheriff comes in, "Up, yeah, clearly self-defense. All right, see ya."
But just to avoid complication, you should probably leave town. Just leave.
Right.
Fine.
Which I thought that was funny, though, the ninja cowboys, because they were the 2 guys at the beginning when they were creeping up on the Macedo farm. And those 2 guys went in first and started, taking out all the other guys, almost like Batman. I mean, that was a cool scene where they've got the black ponchos and they're creeping up and, like, literally pulling people back into the shadows and breaking their necks and stuff.
Yeah, it's very, you can definitely see that there's some, like, pulp influence on some of these Westerns.
Yeah, absolutely. So Lee Van Cleef, I remember seeing him as a kid at the drive-in, because he was in Escape from New York in '81. I also knew him from TV because I'd seen him in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and which, if people at home don't know, they should know that it's a spaghetti western starring Clint Eastwood from '66, and it was directed by Sergio Leone. But for me, Lee Van Cleef, what put him on the map for me was he was the lead in an '84 TV show called The Master, in which he was this American ninja master named John Peter McAllister, and he had this apprentice that he was training named Max Keller, who was played by Timothy Van Patten, who I also knew him from. He played a character called Salami on a show called The White Shadows, and it was one of those storylines where they were on the hunt for Lee Van Cleef's character's daughter, and along the way they'd help people in trouble. So it was kind of like the A-Team except with ninjas. And I just always, to me, that was Lee Van Cleef until I really got into the westerns. I mean, like I said, I had seen him in a few of them, but it wasn't until The Master that he was like, okay, he's right up there with me, with, like Vincent Price and Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, and Lee Van Cleef,
Yeah, that's fair. I'm guessing that Shane Black was also a fan of that because the bad guy in Lethal Weapon was named Peter McAllister.
That's right. Yep, that must be. Geez, I forgot. I didn't even catch that. That's so funny. Yeah, so Lee Van Cleef, he's just was born to play these roles. Then we've got, like we said, John Philip Law. The movie was directed by Giulio Petroni. He's only got like 14 credits to his name, so this was probably his most famous film. But the writer, Luciano Vincenzoni, he wrote a lot of films, and in particular, in the year prior, '66, he wrote The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So he knew what he was doing when it came to these movies.
Yeah, and I will say, again, this being my first introduction into a spaghetti western, it definitely had all of the stuff that I expected to see. Hotshot young kid. It's like he's clearly very skilled, but like there's an older guy that's definitely better than he is, and it's almost like trying to train him,
right?
Because like he feels responsible for him. The trapdoor. Oh my god, I loved the trapdoor.
That took me totally by surprise. I'd forgotten about that. I was like, because what was it? Lee Van Cleef comes in, and who was it? Was it Walcott?
Yes.
Yeah. And he's like, Walcott, he's demanding his money. Walcott's like, all right, how about I'll give you $10,000 down. He's like, sure. And he goes, okay, have a seat. So he does. And instead of reaching into his drawer, he pulls a lever on his desk, and the fucking floor opens up, and Lee Van Cleef falls into the basement. I was like, I was blown away by that.
Yeah, like I did not expect. I'm like, he's reaching for a gun. Like, he's going to reach for a gun, and Lee Van Cleef is going to put a bullet through his face and be like, man, that's $30,000 I don't get. Like, every time I want money from somebody. And instead it was a goddamn trapdoor. It's like, you've got to be shitting me right now. Like, trapdoor. Like, and the thing that I found the most irritating about that scene, it's like, this guy has been shown to be, like you said, like Batman throughout this entire movie. Right. And like, he falls for the trapdoor? It's like, oh, come on.
I know. It's just too funny. It had to be they just wanted to just surprise the audience, because I've never seen anything like that before.
Oh, but it was so great. It was like so absurd and so out there. But when it happens, you're just like, all right, that's the best. That's great. He just, he fucking trapdoor. Like, and like, it wasn't like, nah, I've got you now, Mr. Bond. Like, it was legit. Like, this was clearly a single-use thing. Like, it's not like I hit a button and, like, you fell and, like, it just closed back up. It's like, no, there is going to be some serious contracting work that goes back into replacing this floor and doing all this. Now he needs a new chair because the chair is broken. And then his goons just come and just pummel the shit out of him.
Ryan walks in and Walcott's like, oh, I get to use my trap door finally.
I know, right? It's like, I've been waiting 15 years for this.
I think it was
long
great.
Con right there.
Exactly. That was a great bait and switch, because Lee Van Cleef had already commented on the fact that, oh, these guys always hide the gun in the drawer. And so it was something he, that's the first thing he would go for is to grab the gun from the drawer. So
Right.
that's what you thought he was doing. And then boom, he falls through the fucking trapdoor in the floor.
Yeah, which again, like that might have been my favorite part of the movie, where it's just like, oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I did like the fact that everything kept going back and forth between Ryan and Bill. Like, they kept helping each other.
Yeah.
Like, I was, like, so before the trapdoor scene, when Kavanaugh hires Bill to kill Ryan, and he sneaks up into his room, he's like, oh, he's clearly hiding behind the curtain because I can see his shoes. It's like, oh, really? Like, that, he's not behind the curtain. They're never behind the curtain. Although I guess in 67 that was,
probably
not as
new.
common.
It's the old boots behind the curtain trick. That was great too. That was just like and you could tell. I mean, someone like Bill probably would have fallen for that because he didn't do much beyond working on his ranch and learning how to shoot.
Right.
So,
he didn't have any real world experience, which is why I think he was, younger rather than older. Like, I think he was in his early 20s.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
As opposed to, mid to late 20s.
Yeah. And it was just kind of funny. Did you find, I found through the movie, and tell me if you agree with this, waiting for Bill and Ryan to fucking team up and work together. And it was this constant back and forth where one steals the other's horse and, constantly trying to one-up them. And I get the fact that, Lee Van Cleef wanted to protect him and he just wanted to get his money and be on his way. But by the same token, it was just like, come on. When are these guys going to wise up and work together?
Well, it's because, like, I kept thinking that too. And I was like, all right, he clearly, like, they both think that their vengeance is more important than the other guys.
Right.
They obviously were both very wronged, and they were obviously both, deserving of their vengeance.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was funny when, I think it was after Kavanaugh was killed and Ryan's pissed that Bill killed Kavanaugh, so he takes his horse again, and he leaves it with an old guy with instructions that when Bill shows up, give him the horse and a kiss. And the old guy looks at him and goes, "Where do you want that kiss?"
Yeah, I think I'll go without it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, they constantly show Ryan being a step ahead of everyone at all times, but, like, he keeps getting caught in, like, the worst ways.
Right.
Again, trapdoor. Sit right there where the X is painted.
Because then they what was it? It was Walker who, was it Walcott or Walker that had him in the, put him through the trapdoor?
Walcott.
Okay. So then he does that to him, and then Walcott's like this local politician, and he's like, yeah, those suckers, they gave me a friggin' $1 million. They put it in the bank here to, for public funds. So he gets all his men to steal the $1 million, and then they leave Lee Van Cleef behind alive so he can get blamed for it. Meanwhile, Walcott's still in town, walking around, and I thought that was like, what a douche.
Yo, yeah, he's such a dick. He really is. It's like, oh yes, yeah, because he's a banker.
Yeah,
like he's in a high up position, but he's probably equal to like the sheriff or the mayor.
That's right. Yeah.
Influence goes.
Yeah.
Because that's how it was back then. It's like, oh, I've got $1 million. Like, even at the beginning when they're talking about they have $200,000, and it's like, $200,000. Lee Van Cleef bought a horse for $6.
Right.
What are you going to buy? Like, there isn't $200,000 worth of stuff in Texas at this point.
Right.
What are you going to do with all that money? There's no point.
I know. Dr. Evil, we don't have that kind of money in this year.
Yeah, right? $11 jillion. It's like, what?
But what I liked was, though, they set up. I liked that they set this up where Lee Van Cleef's in jail, and John Philip Law shows up, and he attaches a chain to a train and puts the other end with a hook on the prison window. So when the train leaves, it yanks the window and half the wall out. And
I know,
they
because I'm like,
manage to escape.
where is he gonna, like, I saw the hook, and I'm like, is he gonna try to, like, pull this with a horse? Like, what?
I thought that too, yeah.
Like, maybe, a carriage or something? I'm like, because he's not hooking it to, a tow truck, like, and driving away.
Right.
But yeah, the train, that was excuse me, walk into a general store. Excuse me, do you have a hooked chain that'll reach from the jail to the train yard? We do. It's an odd request, but we happen to have that. Okay, I'll take it. How much is it? $3. It's a mile of chain. Do you need help carrying it? Yeah. Let me also buy a team of horses for $15.
Oh, too funny. But you know what was really cool, too, though? To really show that Ryan was a tough guy is that he would shave with his Bowie knife and no shaving cream. He was a real man. They showed him doing it twice.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that to me, I think that's like to kind of show how regimented and fastidious he is. Although I want to know, how did he shave in prison? Because I doubt they'd give him a Bowie knife.
That's a good point.
And
well,
he was
they probably had a prison
perfectly
barber.
clean shaven with that magnificent mustache.
Yeah, that's true. So then we get Bill kills Paco. He's the guy with the earring.
Yep.
But then, of course, he gets knocked out. And that was a point where I was yelling at the TV, when the hell are they going to get together? Because they keep getting knocked out or captured. So they bring Paco's body back to his brother Pedro, who's the guy with the scar on his face, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Paco was the earring and Pedro was the scar, the brother. And what they end up doing is they bury him, Bill, up to his neck, sort of like we do with our kids at the beach. And I kind of half expected them to smear jelly on his face so the red ants would get him.
Well, they did cram his mouth full of salt.
Yeah, that was awful.
Like, it's like, oh, yeah, like that's, just make him, like, that's torturous.
Yeah, that's, because then he'll be, like, his mouth will be so dry, it'll be even worse if he's sitting in the sun all day.
But at least they had the bowl of water, like, just out of reach.
Right. But then, of course, Ryan shows up and he dispatches the bad guys. And I really love the scene where the townsfolk realize there are no more bad guys left here. And they all come out and they get on their hands and knees and they're trying to give him water and dig him out of there. That was a great scene, I thought.
I thought it was funny when Ryan tried to pull him out by his head.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's going to work.
Apparently, if you're buried like that, it's very difficult to get out. It's not as easy as you would think.
See, I was looking at it, I was like, why doesn't he start by, like, moving his fingers,
Yes.
and, like, slowly but he had his hands tied behind his back.
Oh, that's right. That's funny, because I
noticed that after they pulled him out.
Yeah. But that was just a great scene. It was like, it really showed you that Ryan and Bill were the good guys. Because the townsfolk, just the way they responded to that whole thing, I just thought that was a cool scene.
Yeah, and it definitely gave Ryan more depth of character, because it's like, his whole thing was, at first it's like, I have to kill all these guys, but then it's like, well, as long as they're dead, like,
yeah,
and I'm kind of a part of it, like, yeah, I guess that's fine. But then it's like, all right, well, let's have a duel now, and Bill's like, well, this is, and see, that's the other thing I realize as I'm looking at this, looking back at this synopsis that I read off of Wikipedia. It says that Bill only, after giving a bullet to Ryan, he only had one bullet left, which is not true. Because Ryan asks him, how many bullets you got left? He says 3. And he gives one to Ryan, and he shoots the guy on the roof. So he's still got one left. He could still kill Ryan.
Right. And but I thought he said he had none. After
Ryan didn't have any. Ryan didn't have any.
Oh, right, okay.
Because he's like, oh, this time I'm out.
That's right. Yeah, that was interesting. And before that, though, we had, once they get once they get Bill out of the hole, they prep the town for battle. They get the women and children to safety, which I always love scenes like that. Like, even Lee Van Cleef was like, do you have a safe place for the women and children to go? And then they shored up the place. And then they hole up for the night, and that's when Ryan takes his shirt off, and Bill sees the skull necklace and realizes that, oh, shit, that's the guy that rescued me, and he was part of the gang all along. And so that's when it comes down to, he's like, basically, Ryan says to him, well, why don't you kill me tomorrow, because I don't think you're going to survive alone against those bad guys tonight.
Yeah, that's basically like, yeah, just wait till tomorrow. Like, I'll accept whatever justice, but just wait till tomorrow.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right. Well, back to sleep.
Right.
Like, how he was able to get right back to sleep after, like, oh, this is the guy that was here. Like, everything else drove him over the edge.
Right.
This guy is like, well, nap time.
Well, I think up to this point, Ryan hasn't given him any cause to fear for his life. If he had every opportunity to kill him if he wanted to kill him. So he probably was confident in the fact that he was honest.
Yeah. I mean, he had been, he had multiple chances to kill him. Like in his, in the hotel room, in a couple other times, like he had the opportunity to kill Bill, but he didn't.
Right. And I think he had the underlying guilt because, like we said before, the first place he goes when he gets out of jail is to the gravesite of the massacred family. So
because he says, like, I got there late and I wasn't a part of it, but I also couldn't put a stop to it either.
Right. Yeah. So I thought that was just, like, spoke volumes for his character. But that end fight with the windstorm, man, that was really cool.
Yeah, like the way they shot that and the way that you were still able to tell what was going on despite the fact that, there's fire and the windstorm and like all kinds of crazy shit happening. Like you were still able to see, see the action clearly, without 900 different cuts in every scene.
Right.
I think that's like a lost art now because you can't have... Like, if you watch one of these, like, Marvel scenes, they've got all this money and everything that they're putting into it. Like, one punch has 3 different cuts to it. It's, like,
right.
So unnecessary. Like, you lose track of the action. You don't know what's going on because there's just so many people fighting and so many things happening all at once. And, with this, you were able to see what was going on. There was some, obviously there's going to be some... cannon fodder, for lack of a better term, running around, with these different guys in the background that don't serve any purpose other than, to be bullet sponges.
There's a great shot where the guy, there's a bad guy and he's hiding around the corner and Lee Van Cleef is kind of pinned down and John Philip Law comes up behind him and just pushes him out into the open and Cleef shoots him right in the chest.
I also like the... sticking the hat on the stick.
Yeah.
So the guy shoots the hat.
Well, if the boots behind the curtain worked.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been a great line of, like, that was my best hat. And, like,
right,
shoots him.
But there was one thing, like I was saying before, I thought John Philip Law's acting was a little bit wooden throughout the movie, although I think he played that way on purpose because at the end, when he has the opportunity now. All the bad guys are dead. He has the opportunity to kill Ryan and, complete the mission. Kill all the bad guys. You can see the vengeance in his eyes. Like, there's just a close-up of his eyes, and I just thought it was an amazing piece of acting right there.
Yeah, like, that was something that he did a lot, and I think that it actually reminded me of a lot of the scenes from Kill Bill when, like, you would have the two opposing sides, see each other, like, you'd have the close-up on the eyes,
Yes.
really expressing, like, I see you, I recognize you, now it ends. And obviously Tarantino's a huge Western fan, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is something that he borrowed, to pay homage. I mean, the guy did get Ennio Morricone his first and only Oscar.
Right.
Although I think he got a Lifetime Achievement Award after that.
Yeah, that's true. And, I think Tarantino borrows and adores both Westerns and Kung Fu movies. Obviously.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, Kill Bill, like, that's what it is. It's a Kung Fu Western.
Right.
I mean, half of it takes place in Texas.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of these movies that were produced in Italy were shot in Spain because they had the expansive deserts that looked like the American West. But overall, I thought this movie was great, even though it was a shitty quality on Prime. There is a Blu-ray out there. I think people should pick that up. But so Pat, give us your final thoughts on Death Rides a Horse.
I really liked it. I kind of wish they had stuck with the original title, which was going to be From Man to Man.
Right.
Which is the Italian title. Or Duel in the Wind, which I also liked.
Oh, that would have been a great title.
I mean, Death Rides a Horse could go... that could literally be any Western.
Yeah.
But I really like this. Having never seen a spaghetti Western before, or really any Western, I think I've seen The Magnificent Seven, like the original, and the remake. And I guess to a lesser extent, Bone Tomahawk. But I haven't really seen like a Western like this, that was made in the 60s. I really liked it. I thought it was well done. I thought Lee Van Cleef was a phenomenal character in this film, and I really liked John Philip Law. Like there was nothing about this I didn't like. Obviously the quality wasn't as good, but I found that as the movie progressed, I noticed it less and less because I was really into the story.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, I agree. I think this was a really good movie. I really wish I had seen this in the theater when it came out. That would have been really a fun experience. Yeah, so I'm excited. I'm glad you liked this, and I'm glad you enjoyed the Invincible Shaolin. And I think you're in for a treat, Pat, moving forward when we continue with this show. I think you're gonna have fun with a lot of these movies that you've never seen before, and that's what we're trying to do for the audience too, is expose you to scenes, to films that you've never seen before, and maybe make you go out and watch them. So that's it. That's all the time we have for today on The East Meets the West. Pat, thank you so much for joining me, and look forward to seeing you again, or hearing you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of The East Meets the West. If you want to chime in about today's episode, please send us an email at theeastmeetsthewest42@gmail.com. You can also check out our other podcast, Then Is Now, at havenpodcasts.com. All our podcasts can be found wherever you get your podcasts from, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and more. So check us out. Spread the word, and if you get a chance, go to those sites where you get your podcasts from and leave us a great review, and that'll help other people to find our shows. I'm Re-Gor, signing off for now. Join us again for the next episode of The East Meets the West.
West is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. All clips played on the show are property of their copyright holders. All other material is copyright Jupiter Media.